Hello there, Darksiders. I hope everyone's doing well today. I want to take a moment and continue on the two previous videos I made about the villain crisis in the sequel trilogy, as well as if Ben and Rey are really Jedi and Sith. But today I want to talk about the governments of the sequel trilogy era, that being the New Republic, the Resistance, as well as the First Order. So I want to start with kind of all of them together. And to try to understand exactly how powerful these governments were, well, we gotta refer to them and kind of look at them by a side by side comparison of different forms of government within the Star Wars universe, including dating back to the Old Republic era. Now, whether or not the Old Republic era is still canon, it's really up for debate. I know a lot of people still consider it canon. I myself still do. But the reality is Disney and Lucasfilm is going to do whatever the hell they want, as they've clearly shown in recent years. Now, in the days of the Old Republic, following the Great Sith War, the Mandalorian Wars, the Jedi Civil War, the Dark War, and the Galactic War, for the most part, the Republic was fairly small. I mean, they weren't as powerful as they were in the Clone War era because, well, one, they really weren't given a chance to expand because with all the wars that literally just happened back to back to back, it really doesn't give them time to essentially expand and build their power. Instead, most of their time was spent on recovery. And after the Jedi Civil War and the events of KOTOR 2, it took the Republic nearly 300 years to really recover themselves from these wars and begin to expand again. But then for those who've played the Old Republic MMO, as you know, the Empire came in and basically started causing havoc all over again. And then somewhere between that time frame, during the time of Darth Bane, the Republic fell, and plus the Empire and the Eternal Empire both fell as well, and the galaxy entered a dark age. But that's a video for another time. So then we get to the prequel era, or the Clone Wars, and at this part, the Republic owns almost half the galaxy, if not a little bit more. I mean, the Hutt cartel still own their piece of territory, and there's still a lot of, independent systems within the rims of the galaxy, but for the most part, the Republic is very large and very in control, of which Palpatine used that to his ability when he was forming the Empire. Because, the Empire truly started in the mid-rims and the outer rims and things like that because he used the Clone Wars as an excuse to deploy his troops to strategic locations for deployments, factory worlds, ship worlds, all that good stuff, because he knew for a fact the core worlds, or the core center of the Republic, would willingly go with the Empire, which, as we saw, they did. And most of the fighting during the rise of the Empire took place in the rims instead of the core. And that's just a quick little brief history, to try to give you an idea of how the Republic went from owning this much of the galaxy to expanding and expanding and expanding, and then eventually the Republic became the Empire, which continued its expansion through conquest instead of diplomacy like the Republic was doing. So now we get to the Galactic Civil War era. The Empire controls a good portion of the galaxy at this point, and most of the galaxy has been discovered during this time, because during the time of the Old Republic, much of the galaxy was still being explored. The unknown regions was vastly different, and they were just massive all over the galaxy. It's how Malak and Revan hid the Starforge so easily, and it's how the Empire was able to form their seat of the Empire so easily because they stuck to the unknown regions. There wasn't a lot of mapped out territory. But during the times of the Empire, the original trilogy, most of that stuff has been mapped out. Of course, 1,000 years of Republic rule and expansion tends to do that. Now, the rebellion, though it was small, it was a lot bigger than what we saw in the movies. You see, we we were focused on the main forces of the rebellion. But the reality is, and this is also in the Disney canons, there were tons of rebel cells across the galaxy. And when Alderaan was destroyed, a lot of systems actually threw away the cast of the Empire and said, we support the Rebel Alliance. And, there was even a Corellian conflict, which is very close to the, Coruscant, because, it's like, here's Coruscant, here's Corellia, very close to each other. And there was a big conflict in the Mid-Rim. Now, some of this is EU, but in recent novels and comics, they did bring that stuff back. However, it doesn't look like it's as significant or it's as big. But, I mean, it's kind of interesting. But then the Empire obviously fell at the Battle of Endor when the main rebel forces assaulted the second Death Star. And we saw the movie on what happens. Now, the Empire was in disarray, and this is canon, part of the Aftermath books, and a few of the other comics that we see is the Empire basically received messages from the Emperor, with those red droids, and most of the Empire's forces were ordered to slowly move to the Outer Rim, other than what forces was stationed at, Coruscant and other key locations within the core. But as time went by, the key locations of the core eventually fell. It was the Outer Rim where the true continuation of the war happened. Now, in the EU version, the Empire was still around, but the war was still continuing. In fact, there was a giant battle for Coruscant, and that kind of marked the role of the Empire. But in the Disney canon, or the new canon, there is no Battle of Coruscant. Basically, Coruscant is kind of left alone, and eventually the Empire surrenders Coruscant to the New Republic, who the New Republic was stationed around Naboo and fellow systems around that area. And when Coruscant fell, the New Republic moved in and kind of took over, but there was no Battle of Coruscant. And then, the regiments of the Empire was left. Eventually, they consolidated on Jakku. Now, this is where the, kind of the observations I've picked up really take place. Now, despite what a video game and a book series, we still really don't know what happened on Jakku. Even with the Poe Dameron comics, that does have an issue that explains the, survival of two stormtroopers who were at the Battle of Jakku. We still don't know what really happened. We know the Empire lost a lot of forces. I mean, they truly lost over half of their Imperial fleet, and the New Republic emerged victorious. Now, the New Republic suffered its casualties as well, but the Empire suffered just so much more in that battle. Now, the survivors of the Imperial sides of Jakku, they retreated to the unknown regions, where they met up at certain coordinates where they were met with the Eclipse, which, for those of you who know the extended universe, the Eclipse was the Emperor's personal Star Destroyer that quite essentially had a miniature Death Star beam on it to destroy capital ships. And for those who've played the Empire at War expansion Forces of Corruptions, the Eclipse is the last mission that you play in the Forces of Corruptions campaign. So if you're interested to see what it looks like, just look it up and boom, there you go. But unfortunately, that's all we get. I mean, I haven't seen any new comics or any new books that has really explained what happened. So this is what we know of the First Order. We know that the survivors of Jakku went to the unknown regions, met up with the Eclipse. The Eclipse was part of a fleet that was mobilized in the unknown regions, but it wasn't a very massive fleet. And we also know that the First Order, or the Old Empire, when they were transitioning to the First Order, they were kidnapping children throughout the galaxy and using them to raise new stormtroopers, new soldiers. But the problem with that is we still don't know exactly how powerful the First Order is. Because, they took the vehicles of the Old Empire, but they built completely new stuff. Now, it's very possible that for the First Order Star Destroyers, they just took the current Star Destroyers they had and they just modified them. Alright, that one I will buy. That one I will buy. But as for other stuff, such as the Snoke's Flagship, the Supremacy, and things like that, I mean, where did it all come from? I mean, granted, the First Order had 30 years, I believe, to build up their forces and plan their attack, but at the same time, 30 years is to build up a fleet to conquer the galaxy. That's a very short amount of time to be able to rule the whole galaxy or, conquer it with one fell swoop, one fell invasion. And unfortunately, Disney hasn't really done a good job at explaining exactly how powerful the First Order is. So, us going into Episode 9, it kind of makes us wonder, or it kind of makes us, wonders exactly how powerful is the First Order? Are they really this true big of a threat? Because we clearly knew and saw in the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War, we knew exactly how big of a threat the Empire and the Separatist was. I mean, the galaxy was divided. More so in the Clone Wars than the Galactic Civil War, but it still counts. So here we are, and as far as we know, their greatest weapon, Starkiller Base, was the only thing the First Order truly had. And in one movie, it's gone. Their super weapon is gone in one movie. Now, this is where I want you to start thinking. They destroyed the First Order's super weapon. No one knows exactly how powerful the First Order is, or how many ships, or troops, or numbers they have, or where they get all their supplies. Now, you could say the Emperor had contingency plans in the unknown region. Okay, I'll give you that one. I mean, he was the Emperor, he had plans all over the goddamn place. But it really doesn't tell us exactly how much the First Order had, or, what was part of the Emperor's plan. And plus, Snoke took over the regiments of the Empire and became the new Supreme Leader and turned it into the First Order. But yet, when we get to The Last Jedi, it says, look, The Last Jedi is literally, a couple minutes after the end of The Force Awakens, and we're already led to believe that the First Order has already moved into the known galaxy and basically planted their flags on the ground and said, this is ours now, you're a part of us, go fuck yourselves, good talk guys, see y'all next time. It's kind of hard to believe, especially since the pure fact that we haven't received any real information about their power. And then we get to the New Republic part of it. Now, the New Republic, they obviously controlled a lot of the old territory of the Empire and a lot of their territory that they controlled of the Rebellion. Now, we're told the New Republic had a very massive fleet. But it wasn't as massive as it was during the age of the Clone Wars, but it was enough to basically outnumber the First Order. But yet, you're telling me that they destroyed the New Republic Senate. They destroyed the Ashian system where the New Republic Senate was, and apparently they decided to park their whole fleet in that one area and completely destroyed them, which allowed the First Order to move in with little to no resistance from anybody, especially with planets that suffered under the Empire. They just bent over willingly and went, oh, just take us, we don't care anymore. I mean, to be fair, that could happen, The scars of the old Empire still runs deep within the galaxy, and a lot of planets, maybe they truly just didn't care. But I have a hard time believing that the destruction of one system, I mean, I understand the Senate was there, but I have a hard time believing that put the entire New Republic in disarray to where the only fighting force left is the Resistance. And you're also telling me that the New Republic spent a good long while fighting the Empire, including the days of rebellion. And you're telling me that in all this time frame, No one noticed the First Order in the unknown regions. They didn't send scouts, they didn't send probes, they didn't do nothing. They just let the First Order do their thing. They didn't notice this giant, massive super laser. And they had no intel of exactly how powerful the First Order was. Look, I understand that Star Wars, the movies and the shows, they were built on the hero's progression for the enemies to be incompetent. But you're telling me that the First Order was able to progress and reassert its dominance on the galaxy because the New Republic was incompetent and just said, they'll be fine. Nothing bad's gonna happen. Why is there red lasers coming at us? You kidding me? I mean, are you absolutely kidding me? That's foolish. Now, in the canon, there was a New Republic admiral who was trying to convince the Senate to take action against the First Order, but there was a lot of, shall we say, traitors within the Senate that prevented that from happening. So, I mean, I have a hard time buying that the New Republic immediately fell right after that. Like, everything just gone. The New Republic collapsed instantly. And, the First Order was able to move in all casual, like, hey, and just take over everything. When you look at the Old Republic MMO, and I'm going to use this as an example because it's a clear example, the Empire did move into Coruscant, destroyed the Jedi Temple, and sacked the living fuck out of Coruscant, which eventually that led to the Treaty of Coruscant. But at the same time, honestly, if the Republic made it clear that if it tried, it could have repelled the forces, but it would have been extremely hard because the Empire moved in, destroyed everything, took out strategic locations, and dug themselves in. So, I mean, from that point, okay, yeah, I understand that. But at the same time, there's tons of people within the Republic that was willing to fight. But yet you're telling me in the New Republic of the Sequel Trilogy era, they lost their form of government, but everyone else is just willing to stand down and not do anything. Foolishness. Absolute foolishness. And now let's get on to the Resistance. The Resistance. This very small ragtag group of fighters fighting the First Order. Apparently, as it said in The Last Jedi, the Resistance has allies all across the Outer Rim. None of them showed up. Now, why is that? Well, I don't know. Maybe if the New Republic space was throwing down their arms and just submitting to the First Order rule, it's highly possible that the planets that said, yeah, we'll come for you, we'll aid the Resistance, also threw down their arms and succumbed to First Order rule. I mean, the First Order had to have had a massive fleet to be able to take over the galaxy like that. Just like in one fell swoop, one fell, swell movement, they conquered everything. But that's what we're led to believe, that the First Order came in and just took over everything, no problem whatsoever. I call bullshit on that. I truly do. And this is why, in my video I made, the villain crisis, is because they're not doing a good job selling us the villains. They're not doing a good job selling us the true threat of the First Order because we know nothing about them. They're not selling us the threat of, Kylo or the Knights of Ren for that matter. They're not selling us the threat. Now, in Rise of Skywalker, maybe that will change and we will get to see exactly how truly powerful the First Order is. But, I mean, I just don't know, because the New Republic to fall immensely like that, it's foolish. It's truly foolish. And plus, there was tons of technology and ships that they raided from the old Empire. I mean, they had a fleet. I mean, they had a military, and you're telling me it was all destroyed by the Starkiller base? It was all gone in an instant? Oh, I mean, I get it. I get it. You know, they gotta progress the story. But unfortunately, it's a story we've already seen. You know, the galaxy's been reset to a place that we've already seen it. And honestly, for us to buy that the First Order has this power, they should tell us a little bit more about them. But they haven't told us anything. Because, I mean, with the Clone Wars and the original trilogy, you know, we see exactly how powerful the Separatist and the Republic was. We see how powerful the Empire was. I mean, it made it very clear to us what they were doing. I mean, even when you go back to the Old Republic, Malak and Revan had the Star Forge. And then the Empire was able to build their forces in the unknown, or part of the unknown region at that time before invading. But they haven't really shown any of that for us to really bite into the First Order being the big threat. Now, I understand these videos have been long, but it's just I gotta go over everything so that we can sit here and look exactly what is going on. I mean, look, maybe the Empire had many more operations going on. Maybe they were constructing secret factories that allowed the First Order to build up so quickly. I just don't know, but I also refuse to believe that the New Republic sat on with their, their thumbs up their asses and let this happen. I mean, these were the people that were oppressing the Empire, or, oppressing the galaxy, that they literally fought a whole war to dethrone them and build a republic, and then they just sat there and let it all happen again. I don't know. I really don't know. Honestly, the sequel trilogy is suffering with storytelling at this point. Like, truly selling us the representation and showing us exactly how powerful everyone is. I mean, what the hell is... What are we getting into at episode 9? I mean, truly. And I'm sure many of y'all have heard about that supposed leak, quotation leak, that came out and said basically the end game of, the Skywalker saga is Rey goes to the second Death Star, activates some prototype transmission, and plays the story of Luke Skywalker. That is another video on its own, but if that's truly the end game and that's what it takes for the galaxy to rise up against the First Order, then that literally just means the First Order moved in and everyone just cowered out, threw down their arms, and just submitted instantly without firing a single shot. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, fuck if I know. I mean, maybe people just didn't want to fight anymore, so they tossed down their arms. But at the same time, if the First Order is truly small and just one Star Destroyer, like we'll say in one system, is enough to have everyone throw down their arms and not fight, that's pretty pathetic. That is pretty pathetic. And if they show us in episode 9 how that the First Order has like tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of forces and fleets and ships, and they're just able to go in and wreck everything, they're gonna have to do a good job explaining how. Anyway, sorry about the last bit, that was more of a ramble. But thank you for tuning in. Apologize about the lengthness of the video, but as I said, we gotta look at everything. Until next time, Darksiders. I'll see y'all next time.